this presentation, we are part of the whole, as I said, is very important to me just based on my own experiences. And my intention is really to weave the science of earth, body, mind connection with just our own intuitive embodied knowing. I'm assuming that many of you joined today with just some of your own experiences and curiosities about the human nature relationships. So we're going to try and weave those together. And if we can get to an experiential, we will. And I'll just start by naming the obvious, which maybe isn't so obvious with the digital age, but you are a human body. Congratulations. This means that you are alive, which is marvelous. It means that you are biological, which means that you are part of the larger ecosystem of Earth. And I really think of an ecosystem as nothing more than a community of different organisms in relationship with each other. So it's really, to me, comes back to being about in relationship. And I'll start with introducing a little bit more about myself so you can understand where I come from and why I think this way, why I feel this way. So, hello, my name is Kelsey, and I believe in the power of relationships to support personal and collective well-being, which really feels like the foundation of an ecosystem. And I've really taken this scientific perspective on relationships and brought it into the therapeutic world, where there's like actually so much more than just science, right? There's like energy, there's like this spirit, there's collective healing, there's some like mystery that can't always be measured. And it all happens in relationship with each other. So just quickly, how I'm influenced. I was raised in a small agricultural town in California, and that really influenced how I grew up sort of connected with the earth. I come from a family where we would go hunting, we grew our own food, like it was very earth-based. We made our own wine. And so I grew up with this sort of developed relationship with land, and growing up really in the dirt. And I've always been drawn to sort of all these different modalities of yoga, meditation, philosophy. In undergrad, I studied biology and human anatomy and physiology. I received my PhD in integrative physiology from CU Boulder in 2021. Meanwhile, I was going on a bunch of rafting trips, particularly in the Grand Canyon, which is one of my deep spiritual places, and just found myself wandering in the backcountry, bringing friends out there, finding my own meaning and connection and wanting to share that with others. After I graduated, I went into biotech and did a short stint in preventative medicine, which was really exciting. I was working in the field of dementia, but I always missed mental health. And so while I was in biotech, actually, I started working in the psychedelic assisted therapy space, which really felt like this combination of like science and mystery. And as I was working in this field, I started, for me, realizing that nature and psychedelics are kind of doing the same thing, actually, and that the same neural mechanisms are actually at play. There's ego dissolution, there's awe and gratitude, and nature might just be a little bit more subtle. So that led me to move into the transpersonal wilderness therapy program at Naropa. And now I feel lucky enough to be doing clinical internship with Katie. And so that's really what's influenced my presentation here. And you'll see these flavors come up a lot. So I just want to name that we all have different orientations, and this is mine. This is a bit of my academic coming out. But I do want to frame our time together today and just like the goals that I hope for us to achieve together. And it's really on a basic level to gain a deeper understanding of our own biology with a multi-systems perspective of the body-mind communication, to understand our own biology through a co-evolutionary lens, to understand our own biology as an extension of Earth's wholeness, and if we have time, understand our own biology by applying concepts to an experiential I have for us. And I'll go into each of these things more deeply. And I also feel it's really important to just have a note on social equity and accessibility here. I mean, this could be an entire presentation or more for sure, but just want to name that the idea of colonialism and really like conquering land or owning land and or people is disconnecting by definition, right? If we're talking about being with, in relationship with. And I also want to name that we're going to be talking about these natural stressors in the environment that are actually really beneficial for our physical and mental health. But I want to name that stress is stress. So when thinking about folks who are maybe just trying to survive or really just struggling to survive, the added natural stressors of the outdoors may or may not be helpful. Stress is stress and it's a load on the body. So I want to have that caveat as well as we go through this. And then there's some really cool ideas around how to incorporate the natural world into urban environments. So policy and urban planning, as well as a lot of initiatives in hospitals these days are actually trying to create more access to gardens or bringing nature indoors for folks who maybe can't necessarily go outdoors. So there are ways to start to bring this in a little bit more. And we're not going to get super into that today, but hopefully another presentation. So what does it mean, at least from my perspective, to be a human body? Well, cells are the basic units of life, and they're super interesting because in some aspect, cells are really self-sufficient, given all the right nutrients and energy requirements. But cells depend on other cells to develop our organs and tissues, and then our organs and tissues depend on each other to create the systems that make up our bodies. But because we are made up of basic units of life, this inherently means we are alive, we are biological, and we are nature. And so those three things are actually not separate for me. We are alive, we are biological, we are nature. Secondly, I think it's really important to know that being a human body means that systems do not operate in isolation. All of these systems influence each other and are in relationship with each other. So particularly in psychotherapy, when we talk about the nervous system, if the nervous system is impacted, the other systems are also impacted and vice versa. So I think just like broadening that scope a little bit more is really important for this work. Because we are a body of many bodies on this earth, we as a system impact the earth and vice versa. So our health depends on Earth's health, and Earth's health depends on our health. I really don't see these things as separate. And then thirdly, systems adapt to meet the needs of the environment. And it's important for this flexibility to occur in a system, just like in any ecological environment. And issues really arise when systems get stuck. So if one system dominates over the others, or if there's just like an inability to adapt and flex. So this is a big slide. Because when we consider the body-mind connection, I really don't see the body and mind as separate. It's like, it's a word that we have been throwing around for a while. It's become really popular to think of this body-mind connection. But for me, it feels so integrated that it's actually one thing. It's actually all just flowing together. Um, but for the sake of conceptualizing all of this, we can think of the body-mind connection as a two-way street. So when the mind is signaling to the body, that is called top-down communication. And when the body is signaling to the brain, that's what we call bottom-up communication. And within this two-way street of back and forth, there's actually many different roads that we can take. And again, we talk about the nervous system a lot in therapy. Um, and that's because it can be fairly easy to track. The nervous system is a great tool to be able to visualize and track arousal, and we can work with that in the moment. But I also just want to point out that there are so many other systems that are also running back and forth between the brain and body. So while we highlight the nervous system, there's actually a lot more going on as well. And this is not an exhaustive list of all the systems, but these are some of them that we're going to come back to throughout this presentation today. So just to kind of touch on them, we have the nervous system, of course. We have the muscular system, which is more how our bodies move and flex physically. We have the hormonal system, which regulates stress hormones, sleep hormones, feel-good hormones. We have the metabolic system, which supports our energy and nutrient uptake. We have the immune system, which promotes inflammation and healing. We have the microbiome, which has gotten a lot of attention recently. And I think it's also just important to name here that there are actually a lot of different microbiomes throughout the body. So it's not just in the gut, it's also on the skin, mouth, lungs, and so on. And then we have the circulatory respiratory system that I'm sort of lumping into one here. And the circulatory system is super important because it brings nutrients to tissues and gets rid of waste. And again, also just want to name, it is one of the primary ways that the brain and body communicates. So just like the nervous system that connects the brain and the body through the spinal cord, the circulatory system is also like circulating and flushing these different metabolites and immune cells and hormones through our bodies. So that's a lot of systems. It makes sense why psychological impacts like trauma can lead to physical manifestations. And we're going to make this even bigger with the body-mind connection, expanding it to the earth, because we are not just a body-mind in isolation. Our evolution as humans, we co-evolved with the natural world. So our bodies, our tissues, our cells are evolutionarily wired to remember these relationships. And our bodies respond to nature without us doing anything. And so this brings me to talking a little bit about that stress. One way to think about this is that natural environments are stressful. In a good way, we call this eustress. So when we're in the wilderness, when we're not living in our cozy homes set to 65 degrees with a fridge and an Uber Eats available, we have to deal with regulating our body temperature. We have to move in some way to find our shelter and our food. We might not be eating every second of the day. And this type of exposure to these elements encourages our systems to expand their tolerance for regulation, to expand their tolerance for that flex, for that flow, for that adaptability. For example, if we're exposed to dirt and microbes and allergens and playing outside as a kiddo, we are less likely to have kind of a dysregulated inflammation as an adult. Our immune systems, if we're exposed to all these things as kids, our immune systems are better able to return to baseline after being activated. So that like shows that we can really be in this movement between states. So an easy question to ask is, how did our ancestors live? And we can think sauna, cold plunge, intermittent fasting, exercise, etc. Another way to say this is even without therapy, putting our bodies into natural environments activates our ancestral or evolutionary physiology. And one of my favorite quotes is from Fritz Perls, who coined the term Gestalt therapy with his wife. And he said, lose your mind and come to your senses. So I've organized the earth, body, mind connection by way of our five senses, and hoping that if nothing else, you can take away from this presentation that each one of these five classic senses, of course, we have more than five, but each of these five does activate this evolutionary physiology and does help our systems regulate. So let's start with sight. It turns out that the color green naturally calms the nervous system. And the idea behind this is that green signals to us evolutionarily the concept of springtime, so access to water and food sources. And it's really interesting because some hospitals are beginning to incorporate the color green into their rooms to help support folks who are stuck inside, and that the color green can actually help folks heal more effectively and efficiently. And this is even through just painting the color green, and also bringing plants indoors. But just the color alone can be supportive. There is also this concept of like a restful gaze. So being outdoors is really pleasant for our eyes because there aren't as many harsh angles and blocked color schemes as like when we're indoors in our urban environments with all our decorations. The natural curves of nature just relaxes naturally the eye muscles, especially, I'm thinking especially after a long day of straining at a computer screen. And just this natural relaxation helps calm the nervous system. And then being outside just with natural sunlight is so important for regulating hormones associated with sleep and mood. And there are a few studies that have come out from the University of Colorado Boulder that show that folks who go camping, even for one weekend, come back with better sleep cycles and balanced hormones. And then for sound, for one, there are studies that show that while we can get used to city noise and our brains can begin to filter out this noise, this filtering actually takes a lot of energy, and just being in around with all the city noise increases levels of the stress hormone cortisol. So if you can be outside of the city noises, just this absence can calm the nervous system and reduce those levels of cortisol. And I do want to say that similar with a lot of nervous system activation, because the nervous system can get so used to city noise, it can at first be pretty disorienting to be without the noise. And just something to track and notice and be with as the body begins to like regulate back into the nature sounds. And replacing city noise, even with just non-threatening sounds like running water, will calm the nervous system. Again, because water is a basic human need, and just this sound will tap into that evolutionary signal for safety, that we are safe. And then there's so much to explore with touch in the natural world. And so being outside means being in contact with all of the invisible microorganisms that we can't see. And in my previous research lab, we called these microbes old friends because they support our immune system, like I said before, just by stressing it a little bit and encouraging our immune system to be able to flex more easily from a state of inflammation and activation to a state of resolution and healing. And then heat and cold are also super interesting because the thermoregulation part of our brain is the same part of our brain that's activated by antidepressants. And so heat and cold can activate those same brain regions associated with mood. They also stimulate nervous system activation. So you might notice it does feel stressful to be really hot or really cold. But again, it's that little stress to help kind of flex the system to be able to shift between states. And then in the outdoors, we're often moving, and body movement like exercise, but even just other movements is like, to me, the ultimate health support. It really impacts all of the different systems, and from a somatic therapy perspective, can also help process emotions. But exercise, if you think about it, activates thermoregulation. You get hot, you sweat, you have your circulatory system is moving, your immune system is impacted, your hormones are impacted. It's all of it. It's really amazing. And then in smell, gosh, I'm just noticing how much I love all these slides. I'm like, and then this is really cool. So different nature beings actually release different chemicals. These things called phytoncides are released from a lot of nature beings, but primarily research from forests. So forest bathing is a big thing right now, and this is part of the physiological reason for why it's so supportive. So phytoncides, geosmin. Can we go back a slide?
Oh, sorry about that.
There we are.
Oops, here we go. Sorry about that, girl.
Got it. Geosmin is released from soil bacteria, and it contributes to that like petrichor smell of after a fresh rain. And then floral scents. And like a lot of these scents, like if you think about the smell of a forest or the smell after a rain or floral scents, they already like often just smell good. Like we enjoy them. But they also activate different physiological systems. And so many different studies show that even though these different chemicals act in different ways, they're generally similar in that they also reduce the stress hormone cortisol and help calm the nervous system. They can actually alter brainwave activity. They can support oxygen and nutrient delivery in the cardiovascular system. And they also enhance the immune system. And finally, taste. So there is this other really cool thing. There's this hypothesis called the xenohormesis hypothesis, which says that molecules and chemicals that are produced by plants that we eat help our bodies sense into the environmental conditions. What season is it? Is there a drought? Like what is going on in the environment? And that whatever chemicals are produced as a product of that environment get ingested and incorporated into our bodies to help us sense what's going on in the environment. So whatever is going on, any environmental changes will change, for example, the composition of an orange, and that will influence our metabolism. And this means that eating food out of season might inadvertently signal different metabolic processes, which can affect our hormones. So we have like a daily hormonal cycle, but we also have yearly hormonal cycles. Also, eating in-season food often refers to just eating fresh food. If you're eating in season, it's generally like fruits and vegetables that are available at that time. And that's just good for our microbiome and our immune function. And then intermittent fasting has also been shown to support metabolism as well as immune function, cardiovascular health, brain function. Intermittent fasting is also a pretty powerful tool. and can have a lot of great benefits. But I really want to put an asterisk here as well, because there are so many additional factors to consider with intermittent fasting. One, for example, is with women, it does matter where you're at in your menstrual cycle while you're intermittently fasting. Okay, and we're actually doing great on time, which is amazing. So I'll just guide you through this it's this super simple grounding exercise that's really quite common. You may have heard of this or experienced it before. It's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 sensory exercise. And it's really just a moment for you to notice what you notice and just enjoy. And we went through this like pretty, intellectual conversation about what's happening, how it's happening. But I really invite you in this experiential to just like drop all of that and just see how you feel in the moment. And this is a great exercise to just do for yourself while you're outdoors in nature. But you'll notice you can even just drop into the present senses right now, no matter where you are. So I'll have you find a comfortable position for yourself if you need to move or stretch or change positions. Just taking a moment to find a comfortable seat. And if you want to start with eyes closed or eyes open, you can do so. We're just going to take a couple of breaths here just to land. And if your eyes have been closed, I'll invite you to gently open them. And just begin to look around the room, wherever you are, and just notice 5 things that are pleasing to you. And just taking a breath into those 5 things are bringing pleasure. And then begin to open your ears and see if there are 4 things that you can hear in this moment. Maybe it's my voice. There's chitter chatter in the other room. Birds, water. And then we'll shift to touch, noticing if there's three items that you can touch, noticing differences in texture, sensation. Just noticing what you notice there. And then moving into the sense of smell, noticing if there's 2 different scents you can notice. Maybe it's clothes or a candle. If you'd like to even experiment, smell a piece of paper, do so. A plant. And then finally, just noticing if there's anything you can taste in this moment. Noticing what that is like to focus in on the sense of taste on your tongue. And even here, even sitting or standing at a desk with a computer screen, we are able to play with these five senses. And you can imagine how playful, actually, and potentially even more engaging this can be outdoors. There can be movement involved, exploration. Yeah. And so just being able to notice what is happening for you in your body as you focus on each of these senses, noticing anything that feels particularly pleasing, what that is like. And then maybe, just maybe, next time you go outside or interact and engage with even one of these senses, hopefully you can remember that even without analyzing it or tapping into anything therapeutic or psychoanalytic, just being with your senses is in itself a therapy. And so I'll just take a moment to note the Earth, Body, Mind offerings we have at the Somatic Nature Therapy Institute. Of course, we offer outdoor and indoor options for therapy for folks in the state of Colorado. I've been offering recently a coaching opportunity, which has also been really near and dear to my heart as someone who identifies as an athlete and loves to do a lot of backcountry adventures. So I'm offering preparation and integration for nature experiences and races. And then, of course, we have so many trainings, quests, nature church, women's groups, art workshops, and so much more. And our website is listed there if you'd like to go and check that out. And then, yeah, I guess we'll open it up for Q&A. I'm so pleasantly surprised that it wasn't as long as I thought it was going to be.
And do you see the chat? Because I think there is a question. And do you want me to keep the slide on or close the slide?
We can close the slides.
Okay. Is there one at the end?
It just says thank you.
Okay. I'll just show this. Thank you. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So I am seeing a question in the chat. I'm curious if there's anything scientifically linked to creativity as well that you can weigh in on, either from focusing on senses or just being in nature again, related to creativity. I love that question. Yeah. So, yes, what is coming up for me in this moment, I actually did quite a bit of research on psychedelics and creativity while I was working in the psychedelic assisted therapy training field. And again, this just feels so similar. There's not a ton of research actually in the nature field, all things considered. And that's why I've sort of used psychedelics as a personal proxy of research for nature, because it does activate a lot of the same neurological and physiological activity. And I do know that there's a connection between creativity and play, which is often cited with psychedelics. And I think that that's very easy to associate with dropping into the senses or nature-based activity or meditation in that way, because there's a little bit of stretching the mind in a way of curiosity, and how curiosity can really promote creativity. and psychological flexibility, which is just the ability to be able to think about things in new ways and new perspectives, which is obviously super important in this field. Are there any other questions?
And are you open to people unmuting too to ask and or putting it in the chat?
Absolutely, yes. Please feel free to unmute and or put it in the chat, whatever feels most comfortable for you.
I'll also read this comment here. I appreciate that you brought in eustress. We tend to only focus on distresses, where if more of us were to understand the value and importance of eustress, we might seek it out or find more ways to access eustress in our lives. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a really beautiful comment. Thank you.
Currently interning at a psychiatric hospital, and I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on the benefit of nature therapy on higher acuity patients in this type of setting where they may not have access to the outdoors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a super interesting question. I would be curious, yeah, with maybe not having access to the outdoors, maybe some of the more accessibility components of bringing nature in, which just a really easy one that comes to mind for me is like with plants and horticulture therapy. Yeah, I mean, I also just because I really operate under this orientation that we are nature, I also just feel like anytime we are engaging with ourselves and engaging with our senses, we are engaging with the biology and the larger whole. And Katie, of course, I always want to know your thoughts on all of these questions. So please feel free to add.
Well, there have been a lot of studies in hospitals or more with like surgeries that rooms with windows, people have, they heal faster, or even rooms with images, photos, or paintings of nature, there's quicker recovery rates. So there is research on that from actually, again, a couple decades. But also people have been getting really creative. I've worked with people with psychiatric diagnoses where we've just been able to go outside in a yard, and things have really shifted. There's a study that's often cited in the field of wilderness and nature-based therapy that's called the tent study, where in the early 1900s with the tuberculosis outbreak, St. Elizabeth Hospital in New York City, they were overflowing. So they took the psychiatric patients and who were there long term and put them out on the lawn in tents for the summer. And many of their symptoms significantly lessened or went away. So much so that it's been highly documented. It wasn't an actual study per se. It wasn't a research study, but so that's one of the first kind of US origins of the field that is often cited. So I would say access to even a little bit of outdoors, windows, bringing, like Kelsey said, horticulture work in, and imagery, sometimes guided imagery or sounds, bringing in the bird sounds can also be calming, just to have that in the background. Mm-hmm. Somebody is also asking, is there a bibliography or other type of source material that you can recommend, or should I just consult PubMed's Google Scholar? Do you have anything you would want to send out in the replay?
Yeah, I was just thinking I'd be happy to just like compile a few of these, and is that possible to like attach it?
Yeah. Yeah, we can definitely attach that.
Fine. Yes, I will.
With Lindsay. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I just add one more thing? I mean, you kind of named this with the hospital, but just thinking about the exercise we did and like how almost simple it can be to bring, like when bringing in the plants, like being able to activate those senses, like looking, smelling, touching the dirt, smelling the dirt, smelling the plant, like, yeah, that can actually be so accessible, even if it seems so small and simple.
Nice. A couple other questions. Someone asked about resources in California. There's also Earth Body Institute. I believe that's what it's called. They do trainings in the Bay Area in eco-psychology. And there's also a question, are nature therapy and eco-psychology the same thing? So eco-psychology was coined in the 1980s, and it is really a philosophy that acknowledges that the health of the earth and the health of humans are inextricably connected. And so eco-psychology works in many different ways. It brings humans sometimes into actually healing the earth, working in devastated areas, and the idea that as we're in relationship with earth, something is happening in us, or looking at our relationship with the natural world. Whereas nature therapy is more broad, and the way that we define it is the conscious incorporation of the natural world into the therapeutic process. So really any therapeutic work that is directly in relationship with the natural world. So there's a big crossover, but I'll just say those terms are refer to something slightly different. And again, often it looks there's big crossover with those terms and practices.
Yeah, is it sacrilegious if I say it feels like the essence is the same or similar? If you need to hop off, feel free to go. Otherwise, we'll just take a couple of breaths together in closing. Go ahead and find your feet on the earth. Noticing all of the places that your body is making contact with the earth, whether that's directly onto the ground or through a seat or cushion. And if it feels good to close your eyes, you can do so. Just begin to notice your breath, its natural cadence, without trying to fix or change. Sensing into your own aliveness in this moment. Imagining on your next inhale the breath coming in and circulating all around to the very edges of your tissues, enriching each individual cell. And on your exhale, releasing the things that your body no longer needs. And as we end our time today, just sending out gratitude for being here. I'm feeling a lot of gratitude to be in connection with you all. And just taking one more breath together. And if you wish to emerge slowly, wiggling fingers and toes or beginning to flutter open your eyelids and coming back into our space, I just want to say thank you very much. It's really fun experiment today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kelsey Loupy, and thank you everyone for being here.